Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today, we are speaking with a married mom of two college-aged kids and two fur babies. She is the founder and CEO of SOLA, I hope I said that right, CBD, and co-coach of Team Special Forces. She started her CBD company in 2018 after the Farm Hemp Bill was passed in an effort to help others on their journey to healing and wellness. She competed from 2005, yes, you heard that correctly, 2005 to 2010 when her kids were little, and then she returned to the stage 10 years later, really more like 11 years later, after a year of prepping. So of course, 2010, start that prep, come back, hit it, or I should say 10 years after 2010, started the prep, came back to it. We're going to talk about that journey. And competing has really brought so much to this athlete's life, even though she's been through a lot of challenging times. It's something that has grounded her so much. And she received a first place show at every single show, which is awesome, that she has done, and even won 2 pro cards at the 2021 NPC Universe in Masters 35 and 40. Then in 2022, she went on to make her pro debut, where she placed 5th at Masters Worlds and Tahoe, then 3rd at Sasquatch and San Antonio. And then this past year, she placed 2nd at the Vancouver Pro, 3rd at Tahoe, and recently Legion Sports Fest, and then a 1st at Chicago, Masters Worlds, and Sasquatch Masters Pro Show. So talk about progression. She has focused on healing from autoimmune disease, navigated the loss of her children's father with them, and has a presence in the rave community, as well as learned to navigate food sensitivities. And being a foodie, even as a competitor, she truly has seen this division evolve since year 1 of the bikini division. So I'm excited to get into all of that with our guest on both video and audio, you guys. So if you're listening to this and you want to watch us chat, go to YouTube at celestial_fit. All that to be said, welcome to the show, Jill Humphrey. How are you doing?
Oh my gosh, Celeste, I'm good. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm happy that you're here too. And we had met at the Angel Competition Bikinis fashion show early last year. I want to say it was, right?
The Olympia one in December last
Oh,
year.
it was at the Olympia. So back in December we met, and I was speaking for them at the time, at some sort of breakout session basically. And it was really a cool experience. And anyways, I'm excited to have you on, talk about your journey more. After researching you so much and learning more about you to prepare for this, I was really excited. So, I have to ask if there's anything you do or think about right before your heel hits the stage.
There is, and that's totally evolved over time. And it's like I used to listen to these and then ask myself, gosh, what do I do? Because I feel like it keeps changing. But this season, for sure, I have really anchored what I do before my heel hits the stage. And it's just a super quick process. And it's just a deep breath. And I slip into a state of gratitude because I truly am grateful that I have the health and the finances, just everything that it takes to get on stage, that I'm able-bodied enough to do this, that I'm privileged enough with my food to say no and eat this bougie ass diet that I eat.
Exactly.
And then I think one word, and that word is shine. And I go out there and I just let my aura shine on stage because I'm happy to be there. I love being there. I love competing, and I'm so grateful for what the sport's done to me.
I love that. Honestly, I think that perspective is so key in making the most of every season. When we get caught up in like, oh, another one of these meals, or I got to do this again. wow, what a blessing that I get to eat this. Sometimes I'm like, we literally are eating Thanksgiving every meal almost. Like we're eating a protein, a carb, a fat. Like we're blessed to have access to that food. And it's really amazing that we have the ability to track macros. That means we probably have a phone, unless some people have done it pen to paper. I did interview somebody who did it pen to paper. I was like, that's different.
That's how I started.
Yeah, sequel. Because you know what? I think the other person who did it was, now that I said that, I think it was my good friend Shantae, I want to say, but she also started very early, like yourself. So yeah, let's go back to the beginning. So you started when Bikini was just like a new little baby on the scene, and actually got a lot of hate back then. People would see the bikini competitors like, the heck? Now look at us. We're practically way bigger than Figure at that time, who was making fun of the bikini competitors. No hate on either side, but it was the truth. So what was it like for you back then compared to now?
Oh gosh. So I actually started in 2005 when it was only the figure division. So I was really small for figure. So they came out with a bikini division in 2009, and it was more like a fitness model search, similar to the Hawaiian Tropics kind of thing. And I was already doing a lot of that for a model and talent company. It kept me in shape in the off season. You know, I was a ring girl for different things. It was a lot of fun. Made a little side hustle cash in the process too. And then I stayed in shape during the improvement season before we even called it improvement season, off season. It was between shows. But it was kind of a joke. I mean, it was like, oh, those are for the girls that don't have the muscle to do figure. And I had just made it to the point in figure where I could win my class and then just never get the overall, because it's tough for us tall girls to fill out our frames. And just to give reference, I was 121 at my first show that I competed in figure, and that's at 5'8".
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, my last show at Legion, I was 131. So, 10 pounds of solid muscle on my frame is a lot, and it took me a long time to do it. But it was just, yeah, it just seemed like it wasn't taken very seriously. And then in 2010, I'd heard some judges feedback and say, look, you should really try bikini. This division was actually built for girls with a structure like yours. You don't have a lot of muscle, and kind of explained what the criteria of the division is, and said that this is going places, but we need to have serious competitors to help us define the division. So I would say that the criteria for the division hasn't necessarily changed, but the physiques that define the criteria has changed. And it's just been beautiful to see that evolution. So 2010, I was like, fine, second year bikini, let's go ahead and just give this a go. So I really didn't work out much. I just didn't. I just let the little muscle I had atrophy. I was doing some ab crunches and step ups and, moderate cardio, a lot of body weight stuff. I mean, I was doing pole fitness classes and working on flexibility and just like that swagger on stage sort of thing. That's what it was about. They paraded us through the audience and like had people cheering. It was so, it was bar bikini contests. Like I was so uncomfortable because it's like, they want us to be taken seriously. And here we are, like being introduced by some supplement company, and like, the cat calls and the whistles, and we're walking down the aisles. It's
giving Hooters calendar.
It was total. Yeah, no, I did Miss Bronston Fit bikini contest where we did calendars. It was totally that vibe. So
yeah,
the same judges too.
But you know what? Like on one hand, I think looking back, I'm kind of being judgmental. In reality, though, that's what they knew, just like.
You also have to remember the era. Like this was Affliction and Stretch Hummer limos and Girls Next Door. Like that was that was our vibe. Like butts weren't even in vogue yet. Like we were all about big implants, and just the whole aesthetic of what was hot in that day was so different.
Yeah, which is also a good point, because hotness and beauty standards, my gosh, the more you try to meet them, the more you lose yourself, I think, because 100%. It will change over time. What people now aspire for would have been looked at as crazy back then. Like you want a big butt and you want to be called a muscle mommy?
Right.
No way, but now it's like, yeah, that sounds right. But
Yeah.
it's probably going to change again. And I think that the what I'm trying to get at is like, even in this sport where there's criteria we're meeting, you've said yourself, the physiques that represent that criteria have changed. So it's important, I believe, to always strive to be your best version of yourself, and don't try to stay in a sport or a category of this sport if you're not actually going to be satisfied in it in the long run.
Yes. Yes. I think a lot of girls are there right now. Those girls that have maxed out their muscle potential for the division of bikini. And then they have to ask themselves, do I want to train hard and heavy and keep going at it? Or am I okay with a different style of training? And other than growing my upper outer glutes, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And it's a really good feeling for me. And I don't feel bad about it because I have so many other things to work on in life. It allows me to step back and do that and then just focus on this is what I need to grow. So it's going to create more balance. But I worked my ass off
Yeah,
for 3 years to make it to that point where I could do that. So to get to that point where the judges are like, that's good. Like,
that's
whew.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that for you. And going from that era to
Yeah.
now what it is, I want to talk about what happened in those 11 years between, but before we do that, I just want to hear your perspective on how does a prep look different now and an improvement season look different now compared to when you first were in it and it first
Oh,
started.
yeah. No, even when I was in figure, so whether it was figure or bikini, I only dieted for 8 weeks. Like for me, prep was 8 weeks. It was a very specific amount. I was very strict about what I did. I just slashed the carbs almost
Yeah.
immediately. I have a journal of how I prepped back then and my weight. And then sometimes I would even leave notes. There was like one of them that was so toxic. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could just talk to my younger self.
Mhm.
Like on this day where I was tracking my food, it said, like something like hamburger and French fries. Like you totally blew it today. Never again. Like, you deserve the extra cardio you get tomorrow. So like that was truly my mindset back then. I weighed everything, tracked everything. I don't know. It was very strict and brutal for 8 weeks. It was kind of that all or nothing. Like I went hard into the show, but I didn't know a better way. I kind of had guidance, but I in hindsight wouldn't call it a coach. I would just go in and get the caliper body fat test every
Yeah.
week to see how I was progressing. And I had this target body fat percentage in mind. But, other than that, it was just, I'd do my cardio, eat my plain grilled chicken or my tuna out of a can. I mean, I think I cried the day that I figured out the serving size in a can of tuna because I knew how many macro or like how many grams of protein I needed and only needed to be eating one can of tuna. I was eating two.
Yeah.
And it gagged me so bad that I would just like put it in my mouth and wash it back with water.
Mhm.
And I love food. And it was just like a super unhealthy, like I didn't even want to eat. I was just choking down the food because I had to. Um, Knowing what I know about nutrition now, I didn't have enough fats for brain function. So I just remember feeling so run down and weak walking up and down stairs at work, brain fog.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the one prep that the person that was kind of coaching me had recommended fat burners and like Clen and T3. And I was like, what's that? And, it was like mid-20s, knew nothing about the sport. And I was like, yeah, I'll totally try that. And like the jitters and the shakes that were so bad. And, you know,
From what part of it?
probably the Clen and the T3, knowing what I know now. And then just super low calories. I was, 900 calories a day,
It's
90
sad.
minutes of cardio.
Yeah. Although I wouldn't say that that's unrealistic
That's
even now.
no, I do that now. I just do
Yeah.
it in a different way.
Yes, exactly. And not running your body to the ground while
Yeah.
you do it. And I imagine that that must have been frustrating for you to have been given a drug, not really being educated on it. And maybe did you feel pressure like this is what I got to do? Or did you just look at it like, oh, it's like a vitamin?
I looked at it like opening the can of tuna and washing it back with water. Like it was just, oh, this is what bodybuilders do. Okay. Well, if I'm going to try bodybuilding, this is what I do. I mean, I came from runway and I mean, I would eat cold chicken breast out of a piece of foil for a week, to like sucked down for a show and then get criticized from a designer that I was too muscular. Well, now I know in hindsight, because I just peeled back a little bit of body fat and water, and now you see the muscles popping.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you've made posts about how you have like broad shoulders too. And I think
Yeah.
oftentimes like people with broad shoulders, they just naturally look a little bit more muscular too.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Coat
Very
hanger for
interesting.
runway.
Yeah. Well, see, so you've had a lot of experience on stage with dieting.
Mhm.
How does your perspective, because you did mention that this was a bit disordered. So how has your perspective evolved since then?
It was actually through my journey of learning health and nutrition and my own food sensitivities and overcoming autoimmune, and then watching my physique change naturally just with light levels of movement and the booty band work I was doing and how I was eating. And I'm like seeing abdominal lines, and I'm just, everything was looking and feeling better. And I was actually looking a little bit like that bikini criteria again. And I had a smoothie shop at the time that was in a gym, and people found out that I used to compete, and they would come to me and ask me questions about diet and, hey, I'm prepping for a show. What can I have that's going to fit my macros? And um, I ended up going to a show and smelling the Protan again. And you know how
Uh-oh.
that just like goes straight to your head. And next thing you're thinking about competing, because I'm looking at these girls going on stage like, geez, I'm actually not that far off. Maybe I could do this again. But I was like, I could do it so much healthier knowing what I know now, because if I'm already fairly lean, eating this way that's healthy, that makes me feel good about myself, that doesn't feel like a diet and it's not torture, I could add a little bit of cardio. Like losing weight's never been a really big deal for me. So the seed was planted.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you kind of were like, okay, I can get back into this. And how did you eventually find your now coach and determine that they're like, this is done differently now? I mean, it's rare to be cutting water and sodium and carbs and all of that leading into a show. I just feel like that education has evolved so much. And then you mentioned too, you had food sensitivities and autoimmune. So how did you work with all of that? How did you find your coach? And ultimately, like, what was the difference in your training and nutrition compared to the early days?
So finding my coach was interesting, and it'll be interesting to define kind of our relationship as coach athlete as well, because I self-coached into my return to stage in 2020.
Wow.
I booked one posing session with someone, but other than that, it was honestly just everything me start to finish. And I reached out for judging feedback, and one of the judges got back to me, and we ended up just talking, but I needed someone to advise me because I'd taken myself as far as I could go on my own with what I knew, but needed to know, like, what's the strategy of going to nationals? What do I need to do with my physique? Because I looked at the top three in open at my first return show, and the girl that won first had these super impressive quads. So as I'm looking at her and looking at myself, I'm like, well, I need more quads to win in bikini. So never mind that I just won 3 first place trophies and my first ever overall in the Masters overall. I'm still going to like, okay, what do I need to be the best? Like that's just how my brain's wired. So I'm hitting quads, I'm hitting adductors, and then this judge gets back to me and he's like, because I got one judge's feedback and I don't know, it wasn't very specific. There wasn't a lot of directions. So, I'm taking measures into my own hands. And then actually the coach that I'm talking about now slash judge, he heard that I was asking for feedback and was like, well, I didn't give my feedback. I didn't even know the process for getting judges feedback
Yeah.
really. So he reached out to me and we talked, and it was actually, no, I needed to downsize my quads a little and streamline my legs and some of these other things. And then it was more like, are you working with anyone? And I said no. And I asked, like, will you kind of advise me? Like, could I at least just send you my check-ins? Like, I don't have anyone to send my check-ins to. I don't feel like I'm able to be objective when I look at myself. I'm just trying to play a social media comparison game and a picture comparison game, and we
Mhm.
all know that doesn't work. So yeah, he actually, I'll say, coached me into USA's. So I would give him like, these are my macros. This is what I'm doing. I'm weird. I do this thing called intuitive macros. So I'm within a range. I know the foods that work for me. I know when I need to dial it back a little and tighten up, or when I can soften up a little bit. So, we're sending check-ins, and like he's a detail guy, and that's what I needed. I needed someone to say, the suit color is better, or, tweak your posing a little bit this way. Because we would do a lot of posing workshops, and, as a judge, almost 20 years on the judging panel, like he's seen a lot of things. So stage IQ and just etiquette going into a show, like don't dress like you're homeless when you show up to check-ins. Like you don't have to be in full glam, but look like yourself so they recognize you. Make a point to shake hands with the expediters and be polite to people backstage. Like that makes your impression makes a difference. So there's these high level esoteric things that I needed as from a coach, where I didn't really need someone saying, drink this much water, do this much sodium, do this much cardio, more like, this is what I see in your physique. And then I would translate that into what that meant in practical application and then perform on that.
That's really cool. So you were getting feedback to streamline your physique a little bit more.
Mhm.
And you also mentioned that you do something called intuitive macros. So how do you do that? And what led you to do that? And does that change in improvement season?
Yes. So definitely changes in improvement season. What led me to do it is kind of, I needed a way that I could compete without falling back into those disordered eating habits and patterns. So I've already established that I can trust my body. I have never once had the feedback that well, no, I'll say that I got the feedback once that I needed to come back leaner, but that's usually not my feedback. Usually it's like, don't get any leaner. So knowing that it's fairly easy for me to get shredded, I actually need to find a way to maintain a healthier, fuller physique, and look my best going into shows. So, usually feeding into shows, I do much longer preps now. I'll do a 16-week prep. I do a 4-week pre-prep before I get into that, where I really clean things out and get ready for it mentally. I don't like to just flip a switch from improvement season into prep. Sorry, I feel like I'm going on a tangent. Can you kind of bring me back to your
Oh,
question?
I love the tangent. I was curious
Okay.
what the
So,
intuitive macros are and how that looks in
okay.
improvement season.
So I do a lot of like data collection and testing, and coach, who is now my business partner with Team Special Forces, like we're co-coaches. He has the parts that he does really well. I have the parts that I do really well. And then we collab and work with our clients. But we plan out my prep, we see where my body fat is. We do the in-body scans, but before people talk crap about in-body and say how, oh, it's not accurate, I've actually tested it in relation to like caliper testing and then hydrostatic dunk tank testing, and they're within 0.5%. So I'll say the leaner you are, the more accurate it probably is. But if you're doing frequent data collection, you at least have these data reference points to go back to. So we're monitoring my base metabolic rate. We're monitoring what is my skeletal muscle mass, what's my water. So we know the breakdown of body composition. And then it's like, okay, this is your target stage weight based on knowing that my sweet spot is X percentage of body fat. So I know kind of how many pounds of fat I have. We can map that out into, do I need to lose 0.3 pounds a week, 0.5 pounds a week, 1 pound a week? Like, what is it? That lets us know how aggressive prep needs to be. And then I also know for my daily activity that that's going to be a range. So if it's leg day plus cardio, my expenditure is going to be higher. So I'm going to be hungrier. So intuitively, I know that I need to bump my calories a little bit on those days, where if it's a rest day, and rest day in prep is more like, hey, I'm doing cardio and I'm doing core and I'm doing stretching and I'm doing posing. Like, that's not most people's definition of rest day, but you know how us competitors are. So
Yeah.
but I just don't need as many calories. Maybe my carbs are a little bit lower on that day. And it takes a long time to get to a point of knowing your body well enough to be able to do this intuitively and to be able to distinguish between hunger cues. Is this a physical hunger cue? Is this an emotional hunger cue? Like, what's making me hungry right now? Am I actually going to be satisfied with a half portion of chicken, veggies, and rice? Or is it really that, that muffin or, something that's not going to help me accomplish the goal that I'm trying to achieve right now? So knowing what those are and then knowing how to manage those. So there's a lot that goes into intuitive macros, but in a nutshell, I have a range, let's call it 1800 to 2200 calories. And I know that my threshold for carbs is, right around 200. And I know my protein targets are always essentially the same. So within that, I know my food sensitivities. I have this list of foods that does really well for me, and I can just kind of make substitutions within that. I know how to season things and, you know, might do my prep foods in a way that I don't feel like I'm missing out on flavor or variety.
I think that's so important, and something that I always mention to competitors, especially when they're worried about trying intuitive eating or taking a step back from tracking, is that we're probably way more equipped than the average person in the normal population because
Yeah.
we've actually spent so much time tracking foods, tracking data, seeing how it affects us, that we should have a bit more confidence in our ability to listen to our body. But the problem is a lot of competitors go on autopilot mode. So they're just doing whatever their coach tells them to do, or they're just trying to fit whatever they can in the macros. So if you're listening and you're like doubting your ability to try intuitively eating, even if it's one day a week, then consider just bringing more mindfulness to each meal that you do eat and building that efficacy and that belief that you actually know your body very well. And the other thing is identity. If you have the identity of someone who generally nourishes their body in a respectful, loving way, it's highly unlikely you're suddenly going to start trashing your body, if you want to say that, or overeating, or making yourself feel sick. Now, of course, if that is something you struggle with, that's what I'm here to help with. But it's important to note that identity plays a key role in this. And sometimes just focusing on who you need to be in order to execute on that confidently matters.
And that's why it's so important to have my coach be in that role for me, because I actually need a lot more of the psychological component and just someone to kind of talk things through with, bounce things off of, kind of collaborate on. There's things I don't know, and then there's things that I kind of just need to hear myself talk and then have this reassurance. So it's nice to have that. And it was the first show that I did going into NPC USA's in 21, or sorry, it was the end of 2020 that I had that. So it was like, oh,
Wait,
okay.
you competed at USA's in 2020?
Yeah.
Was it Masters USA's or
Oh, I
I
did
competed
Masters
at
and
US?
COVID. So that was the COVID year when it was in Arizona.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
Arizona. I
in
was there
December.
too.
Oh my
No,
goodness.
yeah, in December. It was
Yeah.
December.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that show as well. That's so funny.
Yeah. I met Savannah and Kimber at that show, and we were all in the tall
That's
class and like got our
awesome.
picture taken together, and then recreated that picture backstage at San Antonio last fall. They were there
I
for the
love
fashion
that.
show. Yeah.
That's awesome. I don't think I even met either of them until later in
Yeah.
my competition
Oh my
journey.
gosh, that's so cool to hear that you were at that one. I found that other competitors we've reconnected now as pros, and we were on the same stage then. So
Yeah, like I think Ariel and Corey and Amy got her pro
Amy,
card, right?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, she won the overall.
In the overall, yep. I remember she went up against Arena Post, and that was an awesome battle. That was fun. That's so crazy that I don't know. That was such a formative memory, but it sounds like that was such a important show for you as well.
That was huge. Yeah. And honestly, I almost didn't make it to the stage. I had a hairline fracture in my foot, or I don't want to self-diagnose because I didn't have an x-ray that confirmed it, but there was a bone chip or something that happened. I was posing barefoot and pivoted on, the outside behind the pinky. And like, I felt like I stepped on a tack or something.
Mm,
And it was super painful, almost like there was this bone chip in my foot or something. I didn't know if I was going to be able to
wow.
walk. It was the end of 2020 and that shut down. And I had been chasing shows since April. I mean, I'd started prep in December, and it was like, I just had this mental goal of getting back to where I left off when I left the sport in 2010. And that was at NPC USA's and I had a fourth place finish. So I was like, I want to get back to there to show that I still got it a decade later. Like,
So
I can
cool.
still do this at the same level I was then, even though the sport's evolved to where it is now.
Did you keep up with the sport and athletes in the sport in that time
Um,
away?
Honestly, no. I was so busy building my business and focusing on all the other stuff that it wasn't even on my radar. And it wasn't until I had my CBD company and I opened my first retail shop in 2019. And I was doing the bulk of the manufacturing on my own in the back, plus running out and helping customers in the front. But even though that's a lot, it was so slow on the retail end. So I would just go hour-long stretches where I'm just sitting and filling bottles and putting labels, just random stuff. So I would put on YouTube videos and I was like, oh, what does the Olympia girls look like now? And then, I'd find this YouTuber and that YouTuber, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're still prepping in these toxic ways. Like, haven't these girls figured out there's a better way yet? And I've honestly watched those competitors evolve on their journey and they're doing it so much better now than they were back in like 2018, 2019. Some of these videos, they were probably 2016, 2017 videos. So I was kind
Yeah.
of catching up on the last few years. Because back when I was in the sport, like we didn't even really have social media.
Definitely
We
didn't.
waited for NPC News online magazine to come out, and we're looking
Dude,
at this,
look
like
at this.
thumbnail size.
This is from an NPC
Oh
News magazine. I keep
look at
this on my
that.
desk. It says IFBB Pro
Oh
Class
my
D. I
gosh.
was Class D when I saved this. Now I'm like Class
Oh,
E. But this is from NPC News magazine.
I
I
love
remember
it.
waiting for
Yes.
those.
Right. So we're like comparing ourselves to nothing but a first overall, they've got their arms in the air. You're looking at this postage stamp size photo. You don't know what the competition is. So yeah, it was just a new world looking at the sport through the lens of social media and YouTube videos and all of that. So part of that was inspiration to me because I was like, oh shoot, I already have the background in this. I know a lot of these things already, and I combine it with like the better version of some of what's being done right now. So
That's right. Yeah, you learned, like you taught, it sounds like you were learning about nutrition, you were teaching yourself, you were expanding. Then, even though you didn't take as much interest in the sport or following it, then you did realize through YouTube and that year you're building up that business that, oh, there's people still doing this and it can be done in
yeah,
these different ways. And I would say around 2018 things started pivoting so much more on social media. You had a little bit of it in 2015 to 2018, but I think things really started pivoting closer to like, well, maybe a little bit before 2018 because it just became more and more known and more people were doing macros, more people were
yeah,
encouraging blood work, more people were encouraging a more flexible approach and steady state cardio instead of all the sprinting and running. So yeah, I think it's evolved so much, but because you weren't keeping up with the sport, I'm actually curious what those 11 years were like for you from the stage. Like, what was your lifestyle like and how did you live healthily?
oh gosh. Well, 2009, 2010, kind of that last time that I was on stage, I was in the process of going through a divorce. I had separated from the kid's dad. I had just started my first business for self. I had a day spa and tanning salon. I was commuting a lot. The kids were in daycare. I was juggling so much. Life was chaos at the time. So how I fit competing into that honestly was just because the bikini division was so soft at the time. I could get by with half-ass workouts and nutrition didn't have to be on point. It wasn't a big deal then, but that's kind of why the sport didn't hold a lot of interest for me anymore because it really wasn't a challenge. I didn't have to work at it. I was also in a very toxic relationship at the time. He was a bodybuilding judge, a local judge. And when I made it to nationals, when I came off stage, he had gone and gotten my judge's feedback from me. And the feedback was like, honestly, just more with the hair. It was the first time I'd gone to stage with straight hair. And I had extensions in and these blonde straight extensions. And honestly, I think my hair might have looked a little frizzy at the time or whatever. So it's like in hindsight, that's actually great feedback. When you're in the top 5 at nationals and your only feedback is to just fix your hair a little bit.
Yeah, that was 2010.
That was 2010. Well, he comes back and tells me that he thinks I need to change my hair color from blonde to dark. He thought I needed to wear a suit of a specific color. And if I was going to continue in the sport, that he thought I needed to take my diet more seriously because it was disrespectful to the sport to do things like, eat a burger on show day or, some of those kind of things. So I realized at that point that the sport wasn't fulfilling for me. Like my why, I didn't really have a why anymore. And I was not about to do something to please someone else. So it just seemed like a natural stopping point. And I don't even know if they had the Olympia for bikini in 2010. So it's like, where do you even go with this? Like for me, making it to nationals and placing top 5 was a total bucket list. It's further than I ever thought I was going to go in the sport. So I was like, I felt like, cool. All right, this chapter is done.
Peace with food without sacrificing your goals as a competitor, because you deserve to have successful preps, productive improvement seasons, and peace of mind year round. I decided to create a free 8-day food relationship coaching series a few years back that over 800 people have gone through. Because when your head is cluttered with thoughts of food, eating, guilt, you have a lot less energy to invest into the goals that you truly care about. So this free program was designed to help athletes like yourself develop a healthy relationship with food so you can have your most fulfilling and effective preps, improvement seasons, and lifestyle phases as well. This is an 8-day series that has a video every single day, a full workbook to guide you through every single video, and you can respond to the emails with the work you did and receive direct support and guidance from me personally, which is, of course, something I love to provide to the community. So you're not only going to discover your ideal relationship with food, but you'll also identify detrimental thought and behavior patterns. You'll overcome guilt and shame, so every decision can be made with intention and pride. We will use expectations and reinforcements to seamlessly manipulate your behavior around food to be more positive and aligned with that ideal relationship with food. We'll figure out why you're really craving what you are when you're sleep deep in another jar of peanut butter, or justifying that next cookie, or continuously eating endless bags of rice cakes, whatever it is for you. We'll become crystal clear on why you act, think, and live the way you do, so you can, of course, act, think, and live the way you want to. And we'll come up with some personal commitments that are rooted in positive psychology based on your current season. So this is a psychoeducational course. It is free to anyone and everyone. You can access it at www.celestial.fit/food series and learn more about it, as well as even get a sneak peek into the accessible PDF notebook with the extra resources and guidance through every single workshop along the way. If you do decide to participate in it and you love it, of course, I encourage you to share it with a friend or a teammate or another athlete who may be struggling. Or if you hear about someone's struggle, let them know that this exists.
Yeah. So going back to the point about the relationship, was it a lot of comments and things like that that made it toxic, or was it more so just in general in other ways too?
Oh, in so many other ways too. I can look at it with reflection, hindsight reflection,
Yeah.
and my own healing process and the journey, and know that it took years after the relationship to not be completely overwhelmed and shaking with anxiety, if I'd see him or something. But it was just an unhealed individual that that took it out on others. Not everyone's a good person, and it doesn't mean that they can't become a good person someday. I always wish that people learn from the bad things in life. He had a really good family, and I was close with the family. So it even makes it harder to get out of a relationship when you've built these bonds and connections and have family with them too. So,
Yeah.
you're like, you can excuse some behaviors thinking, but they come from good people, and then you throw in gaslighting and other things that make you question your self-worth. And, I was seeing a therapist and I was on medication at the time, and I was medicating for one thing. My depression and anxiety were really for one thing. And if you took that one thing out of my life, I didn't need any of that. You know, I didn't like who I was. I am an emotional person. I enjoy the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows and everything in between, because it's what makes us human. You know,
Exactly.
I didn't want to go through the human experience on this flatline numb. So, you know, it wasn't easy, but I got out of that relationship. You know, I couldn't stay in something where I would say that I wanted my daughter to think it was okay to grow up to think that she deserved to be treated like this in a relationship. And I'll be damned if I raise a son that thinks it's okay to treat a woman this way. So,
Exactly. I think there's a time in a woman's life where she stops dating for herself if she is interested in having kids and starts dating for her children.
yeah. Yeah. And I had the kids to think about. So ended that relationship, and you know, everything that you have to lose in life is truly just a clearing to make room for something better, you know, and that was the clearing for the space of the relationship that led me to be able to meet my husband and have something that is really healthy. You know, I can look back at the relationship with my kid's dad and not have regrets because we had two beautiful children out of it. But know that both of us, myself especially, but was a very unhealed and very young individual. And I looked for many things that I was missing in my relationship with my mother, in that relationship, and found a lot of unhealed and toxic traits that I identified with in my mother figure in him. And then with the second one, it was almost like the unhealed issues with my father, all of his bad traits and none of the good ones. So I kind of had to make peace with that. And then through my own healing journey, and then in meeting my husband now, this is kind of who I would have chosen back when I was a kid, you know,
Mm.
without having gone through all that trauma, like at my core essence of who I was, and not from these, you know, external unhealed, trying to fill the broken pieces type position.
That's so insightful. How would someone know if they were in that type of, because I feel like a lot of times when you are in that position, you're almost like blind to it. You don't like want to recognize it, or maybe you feel it on some level, but it's hard. So how might someone recognize it? And also, how would you empower them to walk away?
Honestly, that's a path that each individual kind of just has to walk on their own. You know, you have to be at a point where you're comfortable being uncomfortable, and you're asking yourself those uncomfortable questions. You know, you're being real and honest with yourself, because it's easy to distract. In fact, this is a theme that's come up with a lot of females in my life lately, to where we busy ourselves and push off some of the difficult decisions we need to make because we're too busy with the other things. And
Mhm.
I'll deal with it when I'm done with prep, or I'll deal with it with this. You know, we can even use competing to distract us from some of these big things in life. But, you know, maybe start developing a list of core values that are very important to you and the non-negotiables in your relationship, and be very aware of what those are, and then analyze what you have in the relationship, and is that where I'm at? And then if you're not there, have that honest conversation with your partner, and maybe ask them, you know, hey, I want us to be stronger as a couple. Can you help me by taking a little bit of time and making a list of the things that maybe you're missing in this relationship, or you wish we had more of, you know, and then have that tough conversation. You know, if this person's right for you and you're right for them, you're going to be okay listening to critique and criticism of things that you could do better. And then they're also going to have to be okay with that too, and not getting defensive. So their reaction to even doing this exercise with you is going to tell a lot about where they're at and their commitment level in this relationship. And then the way that the conversation goes is also going to be very telling on how that goes. So
Agreed.
it's not going to be easy, but we kind of know as competitors that if you want something, it's got to be worth doing. And most things that are worth doing are going to be easy, but they're going to be worth it.
So true. Yeah, that's such a great point. I think if I could tell my 18-year-old self something, it would have been to like maybe make sure the values that I was, had in my life were ones that I could see long-term in a partnership or relationship, like really establish that. But I didn't know I was 18, right? So, which we talked about before we were recording, how there's certain things like that. And now that I'm older and my goal would be to be a mom one day, like those are things that take up a lot more space, more seriously in my mind. So I appreciate you sharing your experiences with that and talking about it. And I know that you lost your children's father, and I imagine that that would have been difficult no matter the circumstances between you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Your heart breaks for your children, even if we weren't friends, but we were friends. And, I've known him for a long time, and we have all these memories together. After enough time passes, you soften a little. And through the healing process, I think we're able to let some of those hurts go, so that when we look back at a time period, we can kind of change the narrative of how we look at that chapter. And I don't ever want to look at the chapter of my kids' young childhood years and elementary years as being anything but sweet. So, I keep those good memories, and then I want to share those memories with the kids. He was a good man. It was absolutely devastating to see him go. Totally unexpected. And yeah, I hate COVID for it. I really do. It totally turned our world upside down.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's not easy to talk about loss in any way. I was looking at my window because a bird flew by right when you were talking about that, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. Yeah.
So he has a way of showing up. I'm not kidding you. He shows up in the form of a ladybug to my daughter.
I had a ladybug in my house yesterday on the kitchen counter. Oh, I just got chills. Wow.
Yeah.
After I prepped your episode.
Wow.
I'll send you the video later.
That's going to be really special.
Yeah.
When my daughter hears this. And then my son and I see angel numbers a lot. So, he's off at college, and I'm wearing my 1111 necklace today, but we always catch the angel numbers and then send them back and forth, and learning how to read those messages and those signs from the universe. And we don't have to understand things on a practical level to feel them on a spiritual or an emotional level. So, just allowing the kids to be open to those kind of things and see the beauty in them.
Absolutely. I know the pain of losing a parent, and I know how important it is when my dad expresses things about my mom being gone, and how valuable that is for me as his daughter to hear him talk about her and the memories. And so you keeping that memory alive and sharing those experiences and the positives, as well as encouraging those types of discussions. When my mom passed away, I remember I was on the airplane to go, come here to this state. This is where she passed away, but I was coloring in a hummingbird. She loved hummingbirds, her favorite bird. So I'm coloring it in, very therapeutic. And then someone in my mom's life sent me a photo, and she was like, this hummingbird came and visited me, and it would not leave my hand. And I was like, no way, look what I just colored on the airplane. And it was a hummingbird. Yeah. And I'm like, in what world does that happen to two people at literally the same exact time? I'm on an airplane and I land, I turn off airplane mode, and I'm seeing this message come through. So strange.
I think the better question is, in what dimension?
Truly.
Because, there's so many different things that we just don't see and we don't understand yet, but it doesn't mean that they're not real. So
exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Well, there's oftentimes things that happen to us throughout our life that forge us into a newer version of ourselves, almost building upon a lot of the strengths or character traits we already had, or even providing us with new ones. And I know it impacted my loss. That loss really impacted my journey and my perspective as an athlete. And I wanted to ask you if there have been things that, or not that, you did just share about the toxic relationship of your past as well, But have there been things throughout your life or your journey as an athlete that have impacted the type of athlete you are now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, pain just kind of shapes you as a person.
Yeah.
So it wasn't easy when I started prep. I was actually in a pretty dark place at that time. So I kind of used prep and competing as a tool to climb my way out, as a way to break down and measure time and put it into more manageable sections of time. Because when you have a goal that feels so daunting and so big and so far out, when, in my case, it was starting a new business, you almost drive yourself mad just putting your head down and working and doing the same thing day in and day out. And I just needed something other than that to look forward to.
Yeah.
And then the world shut down, and Washington State was super strict with the mandates. So like we had to shut everything down, and it was already a new business. So trying to navigate COVID and the shutdowns, and well, I'm still going to compete because honestly, this is kind of all I'm hanging on to right now. It's giving me something to wake up to in the morning to keep me going and not feel like giving up. So,
Exactly.
and then the show would get postponed. And so
Oh.
it's like, okay, this mental exercise and letting go of that attachment and adjusting and adapting and figuring out what the next target and the next goal is, and being okay following a moving target and not giving up. And that was just okay. I knew that getting back into competing was going to spill over into all areas of my life.
Yeah.
And if I could reconnect with and anchor that feeling of winning, then I could recreate that winning into other areas of my life where I really needed it. And so it built this grit, this relentless determination in me, during 2020, that just kind of turned me into the warrior that I think my soul knew that I was destined to be. And it just kind of mimicked this pattern throughout my life of tragedy, pain, difficulty, and yet you still keep going. And I was able to show that to my kids when their dad died in 2021, that, okay, I had just won my pro card and I'm going to keep going, and they both continued with college when most people would have given up. And, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with needing to take a step back and regroup, or a tragedy like that completely throwing you off course. But that's honestly just not the people that I come from. And my kids are just not wired that way. Like they're wired to keep going. So, they're managing, they're processing their pain, they're carrying the pieces of it with them that you don't ever put down, but they're creating this life post trauma. You know how it is. It's this line of demarcation. There will forever be before the death and after the death. It changes life in a different way. And then there was challenges every prep, so it taught me that nothing is ever perfect, but that doesn't mean that you can't keep trying, you can't keep improving, you can't keep progressing.
Yeah, I try to remind myself there was a version of me who cared about this before that tragedy. So I can show up for her, even if this version of me sometimes still questions it or has struggle, especially like right after my mom died. That's how I was feeling. But I kept showing up because I knew that if there was a version of me before this that thought it was worthwhile, then she's probably still in me and I shouldn't give up on her. And I think that we build so much resilience through continuing to show up. And there's a difference between showing up to avoid and showing up to process.
Yeah.
So a lot of people might just, like you said earlier, brush things under the rug, use competing as a way to avoid those really big emotions. And then in other ways, we can see competing as really, really beneficial. Like you said, learning to have wins again, show up every day, have routine, like having routine amongst a complete life change is such a big deal. Like that's what kept me going, is I already had a routine in place. If I didn't, I can only imagine like how much it would have rocked me.
Yeah. My son was in his senior year of high school when it happened, and my daughter was second year of college. And it was honestly my 1 hour or my hour and a half that I would leave and go to the gym every day was my only escape from that heaviness of grief that was just over the house. And as a mother and watching my kids go through this trauma and this grief, you feel this heaviness. And even though we can try not to, we're still carrying the emotion of that grief just because we're empathetic to the pain that they're going through. We're trying to do extra things to help them feel better, even though sometimes there's just nothing we can do. But the gym was kind of my escape from that, just for an hour to shut my brain off and think about something that wasn't that, and kind of be out of that heavy atmosphere. And I can look back and say, oh my gosh, I don't think I connected with my muscles in any way. Like, those were probably some of the most inefficient workouts ever. I know I wanted to start prep January of that year for some early spring shows in 2022. And I had a in-person check-in with my coach in December or January for a physique assessment. And I shook, like the way that you'll tremble on stage when you get the uncontrollable shakes, if that's ever happened to you. It was like that. And I'm like, what the heck is this? But in my mind, I knew I wasn't ready. In my heart, I knew I wasn't ready. I was scared because I didn't want to hear it, but that was the confirmation I got. But it was like, okay, because I didn't have an efficient improvement season, and it's only been a few, 3-4 months. You don't build what you need to build in that short amount of time. And it's okay to give yourself a little bit of a pass. Like, your life is in upheaval, you're going through grief. Like, be gentle with yourself.
Absolutely. It's very important to have that compassion through difficult times. And even if someone's not experienced a loss, they're just facing a challenge or darkness in their life, this still applies. Like, you're never too far gone or too far removed or too dark to not be able to overcome something. And I think that's a very important. A ladybug just landed on the window, by the way. I'm like,
there's
okay.
Some confirmation.
Yeah, he's like, well, this is me, everyone. That's pretty awesome. Because I was like, is that a ladybug? And that, yeah, it's right here. I'll just take a photo so I can send it to you later. But yeah, it's literally like just chilling. And I know it's a ladybug because it flew away and I saw its, polka dotted back. So it's important to have compassion. It's important to have resilience. And you may not feel resilient in the moment, but the scared, doubtful, challenged part of you that still shows up is the one that builds the confident, courageous, resilient version. So even when you're in the trenches and you feel like, gosh, there's no way out, you're actually in that moment forging a version of you that you've never met before. And it's going to be really powerful.
Well, growth happens outside the comfort zone. And I believe that's in all things mind, body, and spirit. And why are we okay doing it in the gym and breaking down our muscles and being so sore we can hardly walk the next day? Why aren't we doing in improvement season the emotional equivalent? Or why aren't we trying to better ourselves, mentally, if we need to progress ourselves from a stuck position in life, whether that's reading some books on relationships or, bettering yourself in something that would be a skill set and a career to move you forward, or learning a new skill set that would allow you to be a better person if you're self-employed and in business. So, doing that inner work too, that kind of goes back to the whole autoimmune thing and intuitive eating and balancing out that mind, body, and spirit, doing the work on all three.
Absolutely. Well, I want to hear more about your most recent seasons too, since you're coming back to this. What inspired you to compete in Masters and also Open?
Open was just intriguing because that's all you saw on social media. Honestly, I just really wasn't seeing much coverage of Masters. I didn't really know any Masters competitors because I didn't follow the right accounts. I see a lot more now because I'm kind of, my eye is on it. But I kind of wondered how I stacked up, because I'm not one of those people that's super delusional and thinks highly of myself in places where I don't actually have talent or something. So knowing that I'm usually my own worst critic and honestly pretty hypercritical of myself, when I can look at myself and say, I actually feel like I would fit and belong in that lineup. Like I can see my lines and my structure, and I could be up there with the best of the best in open. And then I found out about masters. I was like, oh, there's a way to crush it in my age category too. And when I had left the sport in 2010, I always had this thing in the back of my mind, maybe I'll come back one day as a masters. So that was always just kind of the in the back of my mind anyway. So I was just being realistic. Hey, I mean, I'm over 40. How about I go crush it in masters? If I do get an open, great. If not, oh well. Like
Yeah.
it's still awesome. And if this sport's still growing, then there's still growth that can happen within the masters category. And women my age have had a lot of tools and techniques and tricks at our disposal that weren't available in decades past to age gracefully and still look incredible. I mean, you look at celebrities like J-Lo and Heidi Klum, and yeah, I know you got to spend a lot of money to stay looking like that, but I mean, I don't know, 40 is the new 20. Like it's not, 40 is not as old as it used to be. So knowing that the masters category had room for growth, I could definitely see myself up there wondering how I stacked up. I was like, let's just give this a go.
Jill, how old are you?
I just turned 44 last month.
That's awesome. Holy moly, you have amazing skin.
Oh, thank you for saying so.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're like
It was
glowing.
it was super oily. Well, I still have oily skin, but it was super oily as a kid. I actually suffered from horrible acne as a teen
Really?
too. Yeah. Yeah. So that was always one of the things that I wanted to have so badly when I was young. I just wanted to have good skin.
Well, you got it now. You've got amazing skin.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think it's a beautiful thing that Masters is a growing category. I mean, we just saw the Masters Olympia come back, which was, is that a goal for you?
It is. And you're not the first person that's asked me. I heard that from a couple judges this year too.
That's awesome. We like
Yeah.
that. I mean, you did so incredible at Worlds. Like it would be almost silly for you not to try to go for it.
So when they announced it and where it was going to be and what the process was, it just, there were a lot of reasons why it didn't necessarily fit. So I didn't apply this year and or for the first Olympia. And my thought was, well, they're going to have it next year and they're going to announce the criteria for how you make it. So I was thinking that it was going to be one of those earn your way in things like the Olympia is. So I was kind of bummed when they didn't come out and say that there was a criteria for how to qualify. We don't even know when the next one is. Excuse me. But from what I'm hearing, they might actually only do it every other year. It
Hmm.
may possibly be an application only. So I don't know. I don't want to just repeat a bunch of rumors, but from what I'm hearing, it's only every other year. So I was kind of bummed, but I have to look at it as the resume I built this past season is going to carry over no matter what. It wouldn't have changed what I did. I still wanted to compete a lot this year and I did what I wanted to do. So
Awesome. Yeah. And I think it's great that you have proven to yourself like you could come back and hang, right?
yeah,
Like you're
yeah.
still doing amazing. You've done amazing every time you've competed in this sport. And are you done for a decent amount of time or are you going to return next year?
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm coming back next year for sure. I'm just trying to figure out when. So I have a plan, but I'm also in the process of I've got blood work early December and I'm not going to go into a prep unless I'm healthy.
Yeah.
So they just announced that there's going to be Masters Bikini at the Emerald Cup in Washington. So it's one of the largest regional shows in our area. It was the very first show I ever did way back in 2005.
Oh,
So it would be a real
gotta
full
go
circle
back
moment to come back. The only problem is it's the end of April. So I would have to start prep in
pretty
January
soon.
pretty soon. So much shorter improvement season. However, I don't need to grow much. The question is it enough to make the improvements that I need to come back? I don't know, but I do really want to do it. And I had a friend recently ask me, well, how many more times do you know that you're going to be able to do this? And it just put it into perspective because that's kind of how I am with everything. Like, I don't know. I'm not guaranteed every day. I'm not guaranteed next year. I'm not guaranteed next season. So, what is my goal? I want to compete a lot. I want to be a legend in the sport. I want to rack up a ridiculous amount of masters titles. So does that align with my goal? Absolutely. It's close to home, so family could come and watch me, which would be really special too. And I have athletes that are competing in the amateur portion of the show, which normally for coaches isn't good, but because of the relationship that Keith and I have in our co-coaching relationship, he's very available, present, and in tune on show days. So he kind of picks up the slack when I'm competing. So really it would be good for me to do. So, I'm just kind of looking at my season. I made a wish list of shows because I also
Yes,
use competing as a way to travel. So I want to be
exactly.
strategic. I want to do the shows that have masters and open. I don't know if you know, but you have to pay to enter a lot of masters shows.
I know it's a qualm I have with the industry.
So I try to pick the masters shows that don't charge the entry fees as often as possible.
Good. I think
Yeah.
more masters competitors need to be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I make sure that I'm thanking the promoters for that because it means a lot. I mean, I've heard stupid reasons as to apparently why they do that. And one of the things I keep hearing, and this could just be other competitor gossip, but this is what comes back to me is that because we can afford it. I'm like, you
I've
guys.
heard that too. I mean, I think that's such a tough one because I think on some level, yeah, that's a good explanation. I just don't understand the reason, and I don't know why. Yeah, I don't understand the reason. And also, you're contributing to it, and all that money is going into one big pot to then win and take home. And I'm like, there's so many other ways to do that. So I commend the promoters who are not doing that.
Yeah.
I think that if you can't afford to do a Masters Pro show without the Masters paying to enter, don't do one unless you're going to do the same thing to other pros. That's just my opinion. Maybe sometimes I should be careful with my
I get
opinion.
behind that. Yeah, and I know I speak on behalf of all of us because we talk about it backstage. We have fun conversations in line, and there's things that come up, and this is a very common theme that comes up.
Yeah, I think that, you already paid to play. You competing at a national level. And I think a lot of masters competitors, they're not just entering 35 and up. It's 35 and up, 45 and up, 40 and up. Depending on how much older they are, like they're entering every division. That adds up so fast at a national level.
Oh yeah.
You're talking almost $1,000 in entry fees.
Yeah.
You've already paid to play.
It's rare that you wouldn't have to travel too. So then you factor in all of that cost too.
I think in my national show last year for North Americans, and I did fly my sister out and have her, stay and do the experience with me, which was so worth it, but like over $1,000. And I was blessed with a suit from my old coach and posing coach, Ingrid. She doesn't make suits anymore, but I was blessed to rock her suits. And this upcoming year I'll be rock, or not this. Yeah. I mean, 2024 rock Toxic Angels, but I'm just like, I think it adds up. So you gotta be willing to make that investment. And I think that a lot of masters competitors, sure, maybe they have more money in the bank, but I don't think that it's fair to place those types of expectations for that reason. If that is the reason, I'd love a reason. If anyone's listening to this who has a reason, we're all ears. Let's hear it. But anyway, let's move away from that. I want to talk to you about what you would describe as a difference between open and masters. Like, what are you noticing is different? So other people who are considering if they should do both, if they should just enter one, what might they need to look for or be considering?
Oh, those open girls' glutes just defy gravity.
I've seen some serious master booties.
Oh yeah. Oh no, don't get me wrong. It's there too, but there's just, it's a skin quality sometimes.
It is different. Mm-hmm.
Skin texture and quality. Our skin just gets a little thinner and loses collagen as we age. That's one of the biggest differences. We might be a little bit harder and a little bit leaner, but only sometimes, really.
Yeah.
Nothing major. I mean, you got some beautiful, phenomenal posers in masters, just like you do in open, and you got some clunky, awkward posers in open, just like you do in masters, and everything in between. You got some good walkers, you got some that drop their glutes when they walk. It's, you got people that hold their pose on the diagonal and look professional and have a smile the whole time. And then you have girls that slouch and act like they couldn't even care that they're there. And it's it's shocking sometimes at the pro level to see certain levels, what to me appears as disrespectful to where we are. Um, but I guess it just goes to show that there's just such a wide range at every level, whether that be national or pro level. I mean, hey, I'm backstage and I see some of the girls for the NPC portion of these shows. And if it weren't for their number having a 1 in front of it, like 148 instead of 48, I wouldn't know that they weren't a pro, because up close they look the same. Like, you just don't know based on, judging people's backstage physique when they're just standing there, what they're going to look like in a pose. Because I see some people and I'm like, oh, you look so normal when I'm used to seeing you look larger than life in these stage photos, and then you see yourself and you kind of feel the same way. Like, I look at myself, I'm like, oh shoot, that's what I look like. That's a superhero. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's just something about just standing there in every day versus being on stage. So, how does your physique translate on show day? How does it look in a lineup? All of these things come into play, for masters competitors for sure. There's certain lineups we might look better in than others.
Yeah, isn't that true for any division, any category, any age, anything? Like, depending on who you're standing next to can make you look so different.
Yeah.
You see that even at open bodybuilder level. Like,
Yes.
it really makes a big difference. And I loved something your coach had told you. So stalking your team page.
Yes.
And yeah, your coach Keith once told you that you can pursue pro status in many fields, but to remain a pro requires vigilant attention to the details that made that happen. So what are some of the things that your team believes separates an amateur from a pro?
It's a 365-day a year sport. You just shift from one season to the next, but each one is very strategic. It is very mindful. It is well thought out. It is calculated. It is deliberate. This is not just, flipping the switch from one to the next and having a cookie cutter protocol for each. It's analyzing all the different components that come in and figuring out, what strategy based on your feedback is going to go into it, but knowing what phase you're in and executing within each one of those phases.
What are some of the things that you do every day? Maybe even some of the things that now you just consider like second nature, but that you feel make a difference in what you bring as an athlete?
My training, my training is always very deliberate. It is very structured. It's, the form is always there. I'm always showing up for myself in that way. My eating habits and working on my digestion, and that looks different in different phases. So, that never goes out of style. Skincare, whether that's in season or improvement season, there's things we do. Hey, I was even doing micro needling on the little tiny folds under my glutes last season to try to improve the look of the wrinkles and the skin under there, because we do lose collagen or we might have little folds. So it's like kind of the outside the box thinking, even when it comes to the posing practice. This is not just in season. It's just knowing those things. I have very structured posing time where I go in and get in the zone and work on that. For my first few seasons, I actually had makeup practice day because I do my own hair and makeup on show day. And I actually help teach others as well. But looking for that right show day look takes some practice, as does slipping in the mindset you need to be in on show day. So I actually practiced that mental component every single Sunday morning, because my husband and I in past seasons would have this routine of going out to brunch on Sundays. So, I would do a full face and try out different colors and looks and things. And, it wasn't like show day bronzer kind of thing, but, the eye makeup and stuff like that. But it would help me feel prettier and better about myself. And then I would do my check-ins and then I would do my posing practice, but it became a part of a routine, even down to the playlist that I would listen to and the songs that I would add to that playlist that kind of create this show day vibe, so that when you are going into show day, you've got this mindset that you're able to slip into, and it really helps. It takes away some of the chaos, and it feels something like it's very natural and part of a routine for you.
Those are awesome tips. Like you're explaining something really beautifully, which it's like anchoring, right? Like you put on a song that you always listen to that puts you in a certain mood. When you're not in that mood or when you need to be in that mood, you pop that song on and it's likely to snap you into that. If you guys are looking for a great playlist, Confessions of a Bikini Pro athlete playlist on Spotify. I don't talk about it much. I should, because you guys work really hard. I have the athletes, like every month we send out a link to the athletes to contribute to it. So you guys can see which athlete contributed what. Generally it'll show you, or they'll tell me what to add. But yeah, you should check it out, because we have a ton of athletes who contribute what it is they're listening to before they go on stage or while they're working out or when they're practicing their posing. And I could not agree more to make your own playlist that just kind of puts you in that energy and that element, that vibe. And especially if you can make it specific to only when you're practicing posing or backstage or getting in that zone. Otherwise it maybe won't feel as much like in that element. But yeah, if you can make it really specific, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Oh, I have playlists from every season. So I'll go back to a different season and be like, oh yeah, this was that season and that's what I was training. And it was like my gym training stuff for that season. And it's just kind of fun to look back. You look at the pictures and listen to the songs and it takes you back to a different season. And I love looking back as my inspiration and my motivation to keep going. Because when you see the progress you've made in your side by side from where you started and where you are now, or where you were last season and where you were this season, you're like, oh my gosh, if I apply the same amount of effort, energy, focus, all of that for X amount of more months, the amount of progress that I can make in that same amount of time moving forward is even going to be an improvement upon what I'm seeing right now, which is already amazing compared to where I was.
Absolutely. There's times where you'll look back at photos and you'll remember everything that went into that and you're proud of it. And then you realize like the athlete you are now is even better, even more different, more developed. And then there's times where, yeah, you hear that song and it takes you right back. I have certain songs that I'm like, I'm back on the treadmill at 3:30 a.m., for my
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. It gets me in that mood again. And so
Right.
chills because I think about it and like I know what song I'm thinking about, and it's like that song brings me back to that time in my life. And I think it's just such a special thing. And bodybuilding has obviously made an impact on your life, but you are highly skilled in other areas and interested in other areas too. You've built your business, your CBD business, and this was after many attempts to have other businesses. So what did you learn from starting and closing some of those other businesses, and how did you apply that to this business, or what do you think makes this one more successful?
Oh, this is the first one I've been able to stick with long enough to actually turn it into something. I feel like there was always something that happened within the first couple years to, I don't know, just kind of change the trajectory that I thought that business was going to take. And, in hindsight, so when I was going through the dissolution of each one of those businesses, each one for a different reason, there was this element of frustration, grief, these negative emotions that would crop up feeling like it was failure in some way. But I love the perspective that my husband puts on this. He was a pitcher, so he understands odds and numbers. And he's like, you don't understand the percentage, like how many times you have to fail to win. And you're looking at them as failures, but they're not failures. Like these are just pivotal moments. You succeeded. Like I used to joke that I flipped businesses like people flipped houses. Like I'm not saying each one of them failed. Like I sold one and then turned it into this and then sold that one and went to work for that company. So it was like everything was just a part of this transitional path that I was on to lead me to where I am. I learned so many different skills with each one. I learned so many lessons with each one. I mean, I feel like I've probably had the equivalent of a master's in business just going through the school of hard knocks for the last decade and a half.
Yeah, no better way to learn than to execute.
Yeah. But yeah, being able to stick with this one and actually develop a brand, being able to connect to my customers on a personal level, with the 4 retail shops that I have has been amazing, because I feel like education sells so much better than any other sales approach. So we're able to be compassionate and listen to our customers and help them find a product that solves their needs. But we just find that so many people come in and just want an ear to listen to. And it just helps to be able to talk and have someone ask, like, well, what are you feeling? What are
Exactly.
you going through? And, they'll break down emotionally sometimes and start crying just talking about what they're going through. But, in the society we live in, we don't have a lot of opportunities for that these days. So we have wonderful repeat business because the products work. It's good, caring, kind people behind the brand. By listening to our customers, we were able to evolve the product line of what we carry so that it's really catered to what they want, whether that be the flavors or the potencies or the fragrance or any random things. It's just fun to be able to, the business it starts as an idea and it grows into this living, breathing entity that is something bigger than just yourself. So
Absolutely.
team development has been huge in that. And it's taken a full 5 years, but I feel like finally we have this amazing team who I love developing people and finding roles that best showcase their skill sets and allow them to develop within those areas where they have that natural aptitude. So as I look around and see the people around me thriving and excelling and learning and honestly doing better than I could do in that role, that's the true reward for me as a business owner, because I don't need to do everything well. I need to realize my own strengths and weaknesses and find people that can do my weaknesses way better than I can.
Totally. Which can be difficult when you run
Yeah.
your own business to give up some of that. Control's not the right word, but to give up some of that maybe freedom or creativity. But
Mhm.
when you do, you realize there's someone else who could do it probably way better and actually will bring even more. And my executive assistant who edits these, she's amazing. And I talk about her often because she's so awesome. And like, I am so glad I hired her
Yeah.
because she brings something to the table that I couldn't, and it made it easier to give up tasks when
Right.
you know the person you're giving them up to is like passionate and also skilled.
Yes. Yes. Because you have to be both. I've
Yeah.
had one, it's only one or the other.
And if you're skilled, but you're not passionate, you're going to be hard to teach or hard to communicate with, I think. But if you're passionate and not skilled, at least with a passion and some skill, you'll grow this skill with the passion. So I just love hearing from another business owner. But what I especially like is how you recognize all those, they're not failures, but we're going to refer to them as failures. All those times that you transitioned, it brought you to something better and it's led you here.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you've learned so much and you're providing a service along with product. You're providing kindness, empathy, compassion, it sounds like. Now, you said you have 4 retail locations. Where are they?
So I'm in Washington, just north of Seattle. So one is inside the Alderwood Mall. I have one in Everett, one in Silver Lake, and then the Marysville location, which was our first location and the one that I'm at today.
Awesome. Well, I'm asking so if anyone's listening who's in the area, they can come by and check it out. And do you sell online as well?
Yeah, I have a website as well. So the retail shops are called Alchemy Health and Wellness. And then the brand is SOLA CBD, which stands for Science of Life Alchemy. And if you look up the definition of Ayurvedic is actually science of life. So, uh,
Mhm.
the core concept is that we are more than our limitations or our afflictions. It's so easy today to identify with a label of, I am diabetic, I am bipolar, I am this. And we have these labels, and those labels become our identity. And the mission behind our brand is to help people manage those symptoms and find relief in a natural way that allows them to get in touch with that identity outside of that label. And then the secondary principle is that nature holds the key to optimal health and wellness. So, CBD is just going to be the gateway to internal healing. It's going to help. It's going to unlock some things. But it's kind of the tip of the iceberg, and it's how deep do you want to take that into your own health journey, whether that goes down to blood testing and hormone optimization. There's, we want people to work with their own team of professionals and go on that journey. So we have a functional nutritionist that we refer people to. She works with our team as far as testing and everything, but just referring people to start that health journey, maybe giving them the gentle nudge in that direction to start.
I love that. I think that's so important. Like, you're encouraging people to think deeper about themselves. And although you're talking more on the physical plane, you did mention some mental planes as well. And that's one of my gripes with the mental health industry is, despite being taught to support clients through diagnosis and only provide diagnosis when beneficial to a client, it has become a label culture. We see it on TikTok. We see it on any social media platform. We just see it all the time, where people are literally identifying with their labels and or their diagnosis, I should say, and they make that who they are. And on some level, I can respect that there's clarity in having diagnosis. There's clarity in having understanding. Labels do bring us some sort of categorization in which our brain functions under. Oh, I see something that I can identify with, therefore it's clear to me, and I appreciate that. And that I understand from the psychological and community perspective, but I do think that there's dangerous territory when it comes to labels, whether it's mental or physical, where because that is now how they see it and they see themselves, they'll seek ways to satisfy those symptoms or live out those symptoms. And we have to remember there's a lot of misdiagnoses. And we also have to remember that much of this can change, especially in the mental world. Unless it's a personality disorder, it can change. You can change how you function and feel. Like you said, your depression and anxiety, it wasn't a result of a chemical imbalance necessarily.
We're going through a tough time, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with needing a crutch to make it through a bad time, as long as you have a strategy around this is not going to become permanent. Whereas a lot of the label and the diagnoses can just be like a full stop at the end of the sentence, and then we're just closing that chapter. But we need to ask the question, and then what happens next? Okay, what comes next? We have this book. I've actually had it in my house for a long time. A therapist recommended it to me, and it was the Heal Your Body A to Z. And it's the dictionary one. It's by Louise Hay. And for every physical affliction, there's this emotional concept and then a new thought pattern that you can adopt. So you can look up everything from like athlete's foot and arthritis to Crohn's to the common cold to anything and everything, blisters and cold sore, everything. So it's so fascinating when you have one of these things crop up in life, and then you go check the symptom, and it might be not going with the flow in life, feeling stuck, and then it tells you the new thought pattern to adopt. So there's been occasions where we've opened the book with customers and looked at it, or looked at it for ourselves or for our family members. My kids know to like go check it if they've got something going on, to do this, this internal thing. But we can take the medication or whatever it is to treat the symptom, but we still need to look for the root cause. And the root cause isn't always strictly physical.
So true. Like that is true in so many areas of life as well. Like you mentioned earlier, like it's seeking expansion and growth and the willingness to grow and learn in different areas of life. It's taking the time to say, okay, how could I improve in my relationship or my faith, my social circle, all these different things, and then making the efforts to do so. Something that I think is cool about you too is it's not just all work, business, competing. It's also relationship, it's your kids, and something that's a fun fact is you like to rave. So I'm curious about this because I'm like, I should say this because I remember I had Christy Brown on. I don't know if are you familiar with Christy Brown?
Yes, wait, is she on from South Carolina?
I don't know where she's from.
I gotta look at. Okay, so I know a Christy, and we really connected this year, but I don't know if it's the same
blonde
one. Yeah.
It might be her. So she's an IFBB Pro as well. Yeah.
So it's really short.
Yeah, she's short, and she wrote a cookbook, and she's a coach.
Oh, no, maybe that's not the same one. It's a different.
I'll send you her Instagram.
Okay, yeah.
She's been on this show too, but her and her husband do a lot of raving as well. Pretty sure her coach is still Dylan Bear. But yeah. So anyway, she's one of the other people I know of who's older, although like you said.
Oh no, we joke and call ourselves the Rave Till Grave community. Like we're the old people in VIP that do it first class.
That's hilarious. See, because you got the money for it, does it? No, just kidding.
We're not using the porta potties anymore. No. We got the private bathrooms. We got
We've outgrown it. That's no longer the experience.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never been to a rave, but don't they say like, isn't there something where it's like group toilets, or you got to go and you're sitting in a stall and then there's people behind you and is that how it is? Is that a rave?
I've never experienced something like that. I mean, I've seen the rows of porta potties, the long lines in the bathrooms, but I've never seen like community toilet type situation.
Okay.
But I mean, I haven't like done the whole Burning Man experience. So maybe you have to like go kind of extreme. I don't know.
So how did you even get into that?
Well, I fell in love with dance music, I guess really early. If I think back, I just didn't really know what it was because I was young. So it always really appealed to me. And then when my kids were young, electronic music was going a little more mainstream. So we had like Darude Sandstorm and Eiffel 65 and some of this
I
stuff.
know none of them, but I'll take your word for it.
I won't go too much into that, but this was like, early days electronic music. And fast forward to 2010-ish, and you just didn't have DJs or electronic music acts playing shows. So you didn't really have an opportunity to go to concerts or shows. And I wasn't at like the early underground raves or any of that. I was home raising babies during those days.
Yeah.
But like 2010, Cascade hosted Identity Festival at the Gorge, which is an amazing venue in Eastern Washington that draws some absolutely amazing acts. Like it's up there with Red Rocks as far as a venue.
Wow.
Like if nobody's done a show at the Gorge, put it on your bucket list. It is breathtaking. Just like this beautiful canyon backdrop with a river running through it and these rocks. The acoustics are incredible. Like
that sounds amazing.
Not a bad seat in the house, but it was, I don't know if it was a 1 day or a 2 day festival, but just the energy and the colors and the costumes and just the vibes, the people, all of it. I was like, this is absolutely amazing. So then that show morphed into one called Paradiso, and then they kind of the evolution of the music and keeping up with all the DJs and everything. Then they launched Bass Canyon. So I don't know, it just, you start showing up each year. And the first year my husband and I got together, we were dating, and I remember distinctly a phone call, and I was kind of nervous because I really liked him. Like I thought we were going to be serious, but I knew if he wasn't into the music, it was kind of going to be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Like, I literally can't do country. Like I can do almost anything.
Really? That's so funny. That's what I listen to. Like, well, I listen to a lot of music. The one thing I don't listen to really is your style music.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I like everything in the electronic music genre, from like the down tempo and the chill vibes and the deep house stuff, the tropical house, like all the way to the heavy bass. Like I'm a headbanger, so
I love it.
I'll throw down to bass. So yeah, I just feel like the community's grown in our area, in our region, in a really cool way. It's a way to reconnect with our little rave family. We have an Airbnb that we stay at, and we get together every couple times a year. And as busy as our schedule is, it's just always something that my husband and I make time for. It's our little getaway. And well, it's not exactly like most couples' idea of a relaxing weekend.
Not a beach vacation.
It's not a beach vacation, but we love it. It suits us. We come back exhausted and recharged at the same time.
That's so awesome. I know it's a lot of movement as well. Like it's nonstop.
Oh yeah. And we'll go for like 3-day festivals too. So like even in a group that goes hard and can go, like I'm one of the last ones standing. Until last year, I met, I'll call her my festy bestie.
Aww.
I spotted her delts and I was like, that girl competes. So I had to go and talk to her, and found out that we were both doing a show in a couple weeks. And like, yeah, we've become friends since. She traveled with me to my first show of the season in Vancouver, and she did North Americans and I did Masters Worlds on the same weekend. And she just recently joined the team. So now I'm also her coach / friend. So it's just fun because you know how hard it is to like meet people that are into your sport, but like not only into your sport, but all these random little side genres that you're interested in. So
Yeah. Oh, like she's like a soulmate bestie.
yeah, I have a picture of us from last weekend at the show I had clients competing in, and it says soulmates. So
Oh, that's so cool. How
yeah,
cute. I
yeah,
think that's so special. I've heard it's such a like this is the thing, like when you accept what you like and you accept who you are and you put yourself out there, you find more people who like that thing and enjoy that thing and embrace that thing. And so you're more comfortable with maybe putting yourself out there and
yeah.
making those connections. And it's a beautiful thing when you do.
Yeah. And I mean, I love it. I listen to the music all year as I'm training. So to be in that environment and that element, listening to it live, seeing the lasers, seeing the pyrotechnics, like actually feeling that bass music, it just kind of brings me back to how I feel when I'm training, like when I want to bust out dancing between sets. And I know it's probably not cool to do that. Like this
I
is
think
how
it's awesome.
my mind feels like moving when I'm listening to this. So to experience it live and then come back and now I'm training, but I'm in that mindset of, oh my gosh, I was
Yeah.
just dancing to this one and that was such a moment. So it kind of feeds my competing in a way as well. Like I hear songs in my head and I'll get songs stuck in my head and I can literally hear them when I'm on stage posing. So I'm almost like posing to the beat of the song in my own head because sometimes I like the music they're playing, sometimes I don't, but I've already practiced that muscle memory of that movement.
That's so awesome. I love that. And when we have those things that just, like you said earlier, bring us into the element and that
Yeah.
we enjoy, it adds to our experience so much. And I just think that's so special. And I know we talked about a variety of things. Is there anything I didn't ask you yet that you wish that I would have?
Oh my gosh. I don't think so.
I know we talked about everything
I
and
know we covered a lot of stuff.
gosh, I thoroughly have enjoyed this. And, I have to wrap up the episode by asking for your best advice. So, what is your best advice for someone who has never competed before but would like to? And then your best advice for someone on their road to pro?
So for the person who has never competed but would like to, step one, go to a show. Just sit there and see what it's about because for a lot of people, they might see it and now the fire's lit and oh yeah, I want to do that. And then other people, it might scare the crap out of you and you're like, nope, not for me. Check
Mhm.
that one off the list. And then part B to that would just be, and then do the show. Like you're not going to look like a pro, you're not going to look like a national level athlete your first show. At least most people won't. There's a few that might have the athletic background that they truly could. But just do the show and know that it's a journey and that is going to be your starting point. You're only going to move up from there. So don't let other people's progress hold you back from starting. And then to the competitor that is on their road to pro, everyone's journey has such a different timeline. And it's just impossible to predict what that timeline is. You might have one of those straight shot to the top type timelines, and that would be amazing. Or you might have that 10-year grind, or you might have some weird hybrid, but it's your journey. So own that journey and, just keep on it. You don't get any closer to your goal by quitting.
Love that. That's such a great saying. And it's so true. So appreciate everything you've shared with us today and how you've exemplified that in your life as well. How can people follow your journey and connect with you moving forward?
So Instagram's probably the best way. You can find me at Jilly the Buff Bean with an underscore under each one of those words. I'm also on Facebook at Jill Humphrey. And then my business website, CBD by Sola, if you want to support my CBD brand.
Awesome. Well, all of that will be in the show notes page, you guys. That's always on celestial.fit/podcast. If you're listening first thing on Friday, it'll be at the top of that page. If you're listening in the future, scroll down to the category section, which is alphabetized. And you won't just see the ways to connect, but you'll also see a full breakdown of the episode in summary format, a bulleted list of the topics we covered, and episode timestamps. So you can go back and listen to your favorite parts. And you can tell all the people you're sharing this with exactly what they have to look forward to and why you love the episode. Of course, tag us as you listen or after. Let us know what your main takeaways are, what you enjoyed. And we look forward to talking with you guys again next week. And it's always such a pleasure to see you guys support the athletes. So thank you for listening. And Jill, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Well, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.